Welcome to Regulate This, an RIAly unfiltered podcast.
When you have an internal team, when you have a CCO internally, how do you know if they're good or not? What should you be looking at? What due diligence should you be doing? And how to determine if they're really up to par? So let's go through some of the things, Layla, that you see on a regular basis that gives you pause, that makes you nervous, that makes you clutch your pearls for the people that, we encounter and we share kind of our knowledge with. What are the things that you've been seeing out in the marketplace with some CCOs that people should be aware of and watching?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Tracy, and I'm happy to jump into it. Let me also note that some of these are actually hiring mistakes I have made in the past and had to learn from the hard way. So part of this is wanting to have you not have to have that experience and save you from some of those experiences that I had. So a lot of times, we've talked about how a lot of firms will make like an admin or an advisor or one of their other C-suite members CCO, right? So it could be the CEO, a lot of times the owner, but it could also be like the CFO or the COO, right? We've also seen that where a different C-suite executive holds the CCO role. Now, that person may end up leaving the firm and they put on their resume, I was CCO and COO, or I was CCO and CFO of this firm. So the new firm that is potentially hiring this person's like, oh, wow, you were in these C-suite positions at this firm, right? And they go through an interview process and they end up hiring this person. And so this person keeps going from firm to firm and building up this resume of all these CCO positions they've had. So from a potential employer's perspective, it's like, oh shit, like you have 10, 15, 20 years of compliance experience. The problem is, I don't think a lot of firms are doing a very good job of thoroughly vetting their compliance officers to actually understand, are you just able to talk a good game and you're good at managing people? Or do you actually know how to do the testing? Do you actually know how to supervise someone doing testing? Would you know if one of your employees escalated something, what to do? How do you keep up with regulatory changes? So I see this a ton, right? Where we've got people who've held CCO roles. Like, let's be real, not a lot of people want that position, but there are people willing to take it and they build this resume. And what I find is a lot of times those people know jack shit about compliance. And it could even be someone who has a designation, right? So there's different designations out there, CRCP, the IAACP, there's a bunch of different designations. But I look at it kind of like law school. I went to law school and I learned about property law and criminal law and evidence. Could I go right now and show up to court and go through and properly represent someone who's facing a murder charge? Hell the fuck no. I'm a lawyer, but do not tell me to come defend you against a murder charge. I might be able to handle a moving violation, right? You drove through a stop sign. You know what I mean? But don't come asking me to come, like I would need to prepare, I would need to revisit those rules of evidence, I would need to review Georgia's laws, I would need to brush up on my interrogatory skills, on examination, cross-examination, like there's a lot I'd have to take the time to brush up on, even before I would get into the facts of the case. So relate that here where you have compliance officers with designations, like I learned some rules, I learned some basic shit, but you don't know how to apply them because you've never applied it to real world situations. And you've been in the leadership role, so no one's taught you, you are just shooting from the hip. And then a lot of times too, these people in these positions, they're using an outsourced provider already. And when you really get into, well, what were you responsible for? What were they responsible for? A lot of times that CCO is just a title. And they're just someone who's managing the outside provider. And the outside provider is the one doing like the annual amendments or the 13F filings and answering their questions, and to a certain level helping them guide on what they need to do. But those are oftentimes the firms that we see are the messiest, have the biggest issues, because there isn't proper documentation of testing. Testing is inadequate. They haven't really supervised their outsourced provider, and they don't know what is missing.
Well, and I think you've made some really good points. A couple of things that I was thinking about when you were talking was one, we've all worked with people. Heck, who knows? Maybe some people have been that person. You might not want to raise your hand in a group, but if it's you, where it's been a title and name only. And sometimes we've seen this with various roles, high level, low level, and everything in between. I mean, we talk about that even in law firms with paralegals. There are some that will classify an assistant as a paralegal who never drafts anything, couldn't do legal research. If, you said your life depends on it, you're going to get thrown off this cliff unless you get into LexisNexis. And they're like looking for a parachute because they know they're going to be thrown off the side. They maybe are personable and wonderful and great at greeting people and getting people to the conference room and organizing a binder for evidence or whatever the case may be. I've met paralegals that are like, oh, I took the dog to the vet and I picked up dry cleaning for the owner and I did all of these things, but they weren't a true paralegal. And then you have others that are called paralegal, and it's only paralegal. It's not head paralegal. It's not litigation paralegal. It's not specialized. And they literally could run circles around most of the attorneys. They know the law like the back of their hand. They can do research like no other. They don't fall into the rabbit hole that some attorneys fall in, which is, I'm going to research until I can research no more. And it becomes like a circular research where it starts folding in on itself. Like, they are savvy as savvy can be. But if I hire just based on the word paralegal on a resume, I might be getting the best person to make coffee and get people to a conference room in the world, or I could be having the person that runs the circles around the attorneys. But if I need one and not the other, I'm going to be shocked when I get the wrong one. So hiring on title alone is silly because titles truly mean absolutely nothing. I mean, a lot of people hire their children and give them a special title who have never earned a thing, or their spouse. Their spouse is the COO, but they've never run a business. They've never worked in a business. They've never had to have difficult conversations or make difficult decisions or do any analysis. It's just a title. So understanding what goes into that title is vital. And that brings me to the second thing. I know when we've hired people or when we've talked to firms that have hired folks, and I'm talking from big organizations, it could be the LPLs, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, all of the big heavy hitters out there. A lot of times they're siloed where they may have worked there for 20 or 30 years and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a veteran of this business that's been there for 25 years. How am I so lucky? And then you bring them in and they literally know a sliver of what everybody else on your team knows because that's the only thing they knew. And so although they may have supervised people that knew a wealth of things more than they did, they literally only knew part of it. So now if they're in charge of overseeing that all of this gets done, it gets done correctly, appropriately, on time, the way it's supposed to be, and they have no clue, it's like the blind leading the blind, right? They're coming in, they're clueless, they're hoping the people there know, they aren't going to be able to answer questions, they aren't going to be able to push back and say, this isn't up to the standard it should be, because they have absolutely no clue. So again, it's also the years don't matter. If I hire a attorney, for example, that has been an attorney for 35 years, but they've literally just been a transactional attorney and never went to court, and I'm a litigation firm, bringing on that 25 or 30-year attorney is not going to do anything for me. They're going to be really a whiz at filing stuff and knowing what goes into the paperwork or maybe writing a brief, but good luck in court. Good luck understanding the rules of evidence. Good luck preparing and being, a good steward of time and money when you have no clue what you're doing. Whereas I could hire a 5-year attorney that's been in litigation, that has worked on death row cases, that can run circles around the 30-year attorney, and they want a hell of a lot less. So it's about understanding what's in the person that you're getting. What is their actual experience? What have they actually done? Not what the bullet points on the resume says. What does it actually mean? What have they put into the time that they've had? When they say they supervise people, what does that mean? What level of supervision? When they say that I was over 3 departments, what does it mean to be over 3 departments? If somebody was sick, did you jump in and fill in their role? Did it just mean that you approve vacations? What is it?
No, those are really great points, because those people exist. I hired someone like that many years ago. This person was a VP of compliance at one of the largest firms in the country. And, when we spoke, it was like, yeah, I supervised compliance. I made sure things got done. I supervised the testing. I was the escalation person. But then once this person came into the firm and actually started working, and, our firm, we train everyone. So if you're a lawyer, you train on all the work that everyone does under you, because you have to be able, in our firm at least, to jump in. You have to be able to understand and triage an issue and facilitate and help the people that you're working with. This person had never done testing, right? So they said they were the escalation person, but they were the escalation person, to your point, Tracy, from an HR perspective. I need vacation, I'm sick, I need this. This person's responsibility was not an actual VP of compliance, right? It was just, I'm a manager of people, and it happens to be a group of people that conduct compliance responsibilities. And so I've received this title of VP of Compliance. And this is someone who had several compliance roles. And so once I started seeing the work product, or lack thereof, and I'm just like, how did you get this far in your career? And it's like, well, for me at one point when I transitioned to compliance, it was the only way to get a promotion. That was the only position I could get promoted to, was this senior compliance leader. So, and then from there, I just kept getting jobs where I was a senior compliance manager type role, where I supervised people, but I never actually had to learn the testing. Blew my fucking mind. So you're managing a team of people in compliance, and you never took it upon yourself to actually learn your craft. That's really not something I am familiar with, because it's not how I'm built. Tracy, I know it's not how you built. But the fact that you would take on a role for which you have no experience and then do nothing to learn about that area so that you could actually be an effective leader, that blows my mind. But it's kind of like what I talked about before. They get in these positions and they keep, because they've held the position once, the next employer is like, oh, you had this position. That person lasted all of a week. All of a week. It did not last long. The only reason it lasted that long is because the first several days are just training on our system. It just did not last. We had a client bring on a CCO. And the funny thing is, the CCO is someone I had interviewed for our firm for a compliance position. And I had determined from that interview that this person did not have the requisite skills and experience to fill a compliance role at our firm. In fact, this person said they were more interested in doing operations, which is what they were used to and liked doing. And then lo and behold, about a month after I had that interview, this person popped up with our client as their new CCO. And, from an HR perspective, you can't be talking about people's interviews. Like, these people are subject to privacy rules, etc. So I knew this background information about this person, didn't have the experience, didn't have the qualification, but had at some point held a compliance role. And in that role, I asked the questions, well, what'd you do? Do you use an outsourced provider? This person used an outsourced provider, and they basically just supervised the outsourced provider. But because they had this title, this person was able to get another job in compliance. So long story short, that person lasted at the firm for less than a year. This is also the same person that told me that they got information about compliance from Reddit. Not the SEC's website, not litigation releases, not other law firms, who put out some information. Fucking Reddit.
I wish that wasn't a common scenario where people hire based on, what they see on the resume for like bullets and not ever actually digging deeper or figuring out what the people know. And I get it when you're in that desperate mode where it's like, I just need a live body to fill this and it can't be me. This isn't the highest and best use of my time. I need to hire somebody else to do this. And you think, oh, this person's done it. They probably know more than I do. I'll bring them in. But then what tends to happen is the abdication, right? Like, well, I've hired the role. So it's like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If I hire it, the person will start and then my compliance will be magically taken care of. And the truth is, after you hire somebody, there's a reason why you put them on probation. It's so that you have an opportunity to kind of sniff around each other. It's still like you're courting. They're proving that they're still the right fit for your firm, and you're proving you're still the right home for them to land for their employer. And so both of you are still doing this dance. But when one of you steps away and says, no, I'm just going to let you have it, and then I'm going to go over here and do other things and, forget about it, you're actually exposing yourself to great risk. You might as well have nobody in that role because you have no clue what's going on, but you're still responsible for it. So you could have somebody with this wonderful resume, and especially if they use ChatGPT that uses fake court cases. I mean, you don't know how much of the resume is actually real or not and what they've actually done. I mean, I've said this on our podcast a couple of times. I helped somebody interview once, and again, it was a marketing person, and they wanted to make this person a director of marketing. And I said, let me see that resume again. I would never have hired this person for a director of marketing. And I started looking, and I'm like, look, based on this resume, you're right. They could have been very high level, or they literally could be putting out the brochures when they go to conventions. I said, just give me a few minutes with this person and let me dig in a little bit. And they said, well, you're not going to find anything, that they wanted to burst my bubble. And I said, great, prove me wrong. So we had the interview, and it turned out that she put out the brochures. And they were going to give her several $100,000 a year. They were going to make her a director, turn over all of their marketing, which was a big percentage of their budget, to this person to decide what to do to bring them to the next level. Can you imagine what a huge mistake that would have been and how much money they would have spent before they figured out that this is not working?
And they wouldn't have found out for a while because, you're so excited about someone coming on. It takes a solid, I would say, at least 6 months before you start really catching on and start seeing trends of I'm late, or, because you basically chalk up any issues in it. Well, they're getting to know the business. They're getting to know the way I want to do marketing. They're learning what I want. There is a period of trial and error. But at some point, it's like, listen, homie, trial error is over. Like, where the fuck is my work product? And I think that's part of and that's for someone who actually has a level of awareness, right? There are a lot of firms, to your point, Tracy, they hire on the role and it's like, peace out, bye. I mean, before I started the firm, I was an employee. And I am actually a good employee. I just also come with a mouth. So for large corporations, I'm probably not the right fit. But I can tell you, every interview I have ever done, no one got into the nitty-gritty of my experience with compliance, right? They were so taken by my charm and my wit, and my ability to really answer their questions in a thoughtful way. Like, I'm a good interviewer. But none of them actually really got to the substance of what my role would be and what I'm responsible for. And some of these roles were CCO and GC roles. And it was pretty much, I remember one role I started, it was in office, and I started, and there was a big whiteboard in the office I was in. So I started mapping out like things I wanted to do. And funny enough, it's the stuff we do now with our firm. Like, I want to review the Form A to B. I want to review the compliance manual. I want to review the contracts, like starting with the basics, getting to know the firm that way, identifying issues, opportunities for improvement, etc. And my boss came in and saw the whiteboard and was like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. But it was pretty much like, here's your office, here's your computer, here's to log in, go. No background on issues. The former CCO had already left. I had like a notebook of his notes that I was trying to make sense of. And this staff that after a month, I was like, this is not the right group of people for this job. But I mean, that is what most people do when it comes to compliance. And then you have someone who doesn't have compliance experience or history interviewing a compliance person. How do you know if they're bullshitting you?
Exactly. I think that there's also the piece that stems from that where you don't know what supports they also had in place. Maybe at their last institution, they were a rock star and they were all the things that are on the resume, but the reason they were a rock star wasn't their own volition. Like, for example, we've had lots of employees here too. We provide super robust training. People might not know this about our firm. Not all firms do this, but we put all of our people, whether you're a compliance officer one or an attorney, through the whole gamut of training, because every role that's the next step has to know what the step before is doing and doing correctly or incorrectly so that they can provide feedback and guidance. And if you're an attorney overseeing the entire matter, you've got to make sure you can do those things to know if they're done appropriately, especially if we're taking on the role of CCO. However, our team also meets every Wednesday, and we meet for the whole compliance team to talk about issues and problems and barriers to success, or good things and how we're going to handle them, or new things that we're seeing in the marketplace and or the industry, and how we're going to choose to navigate those complexities with our own clients. We meet every Wednesday and do a legal team meeting. Once a month, we meet and go over new ways we can improve testing or new testing that's emerging and ways that we can handle that. So there's a ton of support. So even when somebody thinks, oh my gosh, they're such a rock star, yes, we think our people are amazing. But a lot of the reasons why they can shine so brightly is because of the whole team that is supporting them, and the brain trust and the hundreds of years when you put all of our knowledge together to be able to explore and make sure that we're getting the correct answers and that we're finding the correct resources and all of those things. So sometimes you can hire somebody from a brain trust like that and think, oh my gosh, I'm getting the brain trust. And you're getting a person. And so you have to also realize that you can think, oh, I'm cherry picking and grabbing somebody and they're going to excel, but you're not getting the support that they have. And perhaps a lot of those ideas are not their own. They aren't even thoughts that would have come to them. I mean, I've seen resumes of people over time that are getting hired by people out in the industry that they're lucky, they're job hopping, and they're maybe making it 3 or 4 months at each place they're at. And then on their resume, yeah, you were CCO and you were CCO but if you put it all together, you were lucky to get a year anywhere, even with all of it combined. and you had such a huge network, even at those big places where you're siloed. You had this whole team that was doing that work. So it was getting done, but not by you.
Tune in to Regulate This next time as we dive into more, because
it is very important to do that due diligence, because you might be hiring somebody that's from a great organization with lots of resources and support, but now you're hiring to your location that doesn't have any of those things.